It's filming now. Very good. Well, hello, folks, and thank you for joining me today. So, dopamine. Dopamine is apparently why you clicked this video. Dopamine is apparently responsible for absolutely everything that we do. And this is, of course, the inherent problem with pop psychology, which is everywhere. I talk a lot about public discourse. One of the things that happens in public discourse that's screwed up is people always meander into psychoanalysis, and it's permeated the general culture to where we have non-specialists constantly naming neurotransmitters as the cause of this or that thing. Simplification has always gotten my goat, oversimplification. People hear about Occam's razor and they just start slicing away everywhere, and they think that folksy pseudo-simplicity, nothing wrong with folksiness, but sometimes people who are not folksy take folksy simplicity and put it on this pedestal, and they think they understand what folksy simplicity is, but really they're just oversimplifying in order to feel smug. And that's what happens when you say dopamine all of the time. So I was exploring various social media portals and stuff because, hey, I'm an online kind of guy. I have a blog where I write essays and stories and things. And I want to find one that doesn't suck. Like Facebook sucks for various reasons. Privacy, the way that they work with foreign governments, I don't like, etc. So, yeah, not my cup of tea. I thought, well, Instagram. But apparently I think Instagram is actually owned by Facebook. But as I was searching for these things, something was suggested in my YouTube feed. Oh, guys, hey, you know what? Sinek, some guy named Sinek is like a British-American author, and there he gives this whole thing about millennials, which I am just sick to death of hearing this thing about millennials. It's what I have come to term, because of its ubiquity, the top boy hypothesis. Here's what happens. Imagine a prep school, and you've got kind of a hierarchy of people, and you have your top boy and your top girl. Right? They're like the head of the class, summa cum laude, all that nonsense. Okay, well, that's kind of what happened. Also, you can just think of toddlers. An older toddler looks at a younger toddler and goes, "You're immature. I know things. I'm a big boy now." Yeah, that's basically whenever, especially boomers or Gen Xers talk about millennials like this, that's what it is. And the boomers, yeah, they started the whole narcissism thing, as you could call it, if you're being reductionist and oversimplistic, but yeah. It's just empty judgmentalism. And I was watching this video, and this guy said dopamine. And it started to really annoy me, because I am myself, of course, not any kind of neuroscientist or psychologist. In fact, I failed my psychology course twice at community college because I was more interested in girls and trying to start a business of some sort and writing and all that nonsense. So, yeah, but I was paying attention during the class, believe it or not. I just didn't do a couple of essays, and you can't not do the work and expect to pass the class. But anyway, I'm just sitting there. That's not how it works. It's always a lot of different things working in conjunction. And what my psychology professor told me, I really liked this. I happened to chance upon a good professor at a community college. Very passionate, had actually practiced either psychology or psychiatry for a number of years. And he kind of like had a almost Billy Mays style of delivery. But he said, the worst thing that you can do to somebody is oversimplify their problem and think that you know where it comes from. You can make suggestions about it, and I'm paraphrasing here. You can make suggestions about it, but everything in a person's life is part of a complex of things. So this already set me up to thinking about dopamine in a negative light when it's used in that way. When you click a Facebook like, or when someone likes your Facebook post, that releases dopamine. Well, no, it doesn't. That's not how dopamine works. Dopamine is constantly being released and suppressed in your brain, as far as I understand the model, based on a number of input and output factors. It's very complicated stuff. And so I got really, really peeved thinking about this, and I typed "stop saying dopamine" into Google. What came up was this article on Psychology Today, which, pardon me while I move this camera, I don't know. Where did it go? All right, I have to find it again because I friggin' navigated away. Yes. Intermissio. Here we go. No, Dopamine is not addictive by David J. Lay, PhD, for those of you who like credentials. Credentialists. I'm all fine with credentials and getting a credit, just not credentialism. That's a whole other can of worms. But here we go. He calls it the anxiety industry. According to the anxiety industry, in quote marks, what I call modern media, dopamine, a neurotransmitter in human brains, is at the root of many social problems. In this recent viral video, the very video I watched, so I'm glad that I came here, dopamine is blamed for creating an addiction to technology, like smartphones or social media. There's a group called the Dopamine Project, which promotes better living through dopamine awareness, and asserts that expectations of scoring dopamine squirts in their brains keep addicts lying, cheating, stealing, and craving the next fix. Forbes, and he just goes on to list all the examples of how people implicate dopamine in all kinds of ways as being the source of problematic behaviors. We're just junkies for that sweet, sweet dopamine. Okay. Dopamine is not a reward chemical. This is me reading again. These are not my words. That's not actually the way our body uses it. First, like all things in our body, dopamine serves many purposes. It serves as a vasodilator, expanding blood vessels in our body. Loss of dopamine results in Parkinsonian conditions, a degenerative neuromuscular disorder. Most antipsychotic drugs work by inhibiting the function of dopamine, not because its reward makes people hallucinate, but because the brains of people with schizophrenia may be overly sensitive to the effects of dopamine. ADHD, attention deficit and hyperactivity disorder, may involve, in part, decreased dopamine activity, where parts of the brain aren't working well enough to constrain attention and resist impulses. Dopamine serves many complex functions in the brain, and only kindergarten brain science, thank you, describes it as an addictive drug. Yep. I'm going to now skip down to the part where he talks about incentive salience, because that's kind of what is more a culprit or an explanatory mechanism for reward-seeking behavior. When a person is about to experience pleasure, dopamine is released in the brain, and in the parts of the brain that experience and process pleasure. Dopamine's role here is not that it makes you feel good. It doesn't. The pleasure and hedonic or euphoria feeling comes from opioids in the brain, neurochemicals which increase pleasure and deaden pain. Dopamine's role in pleasure and reward is that it helps your brain to recognize incentive salience. This means that it's like a little red flag to your brain saying, hey, pay attention, this is about to feel good, and you want to remember this so you can do it again. A critical issue here is that a lack of dopamine doesn't actually make the experience feel less good. In studies with rats where dopamine was suppressed, rats showed normal hedonic reaction patterns and still showed normal pleasure responses even though dopamine was suppressed. So, whoa. Here we go. That was another intermissio for you. This is where he talks about oversimplification. And I'm going to link to this article because I'm basically de facto plagiarizing it. People's problems are never simple. And when a person does a thing over and over, even when the behavior is causing problems, there are a great many complex reasons behind that behavior. When we offer the reductively simple answer of because dopamine, it distracts us from the person. It is the person who learns, and dopamine is merely a factor, one factor among many in the learning. When we encourage people who are watching too much porn, using the cell phone while driving, or looking at Facebook every 2 minutes, to blame their problems on dopamine, we teach them to externalize the problem and blame it on dopamine. Instead, we focus on the learning and the science aspects of these processes. It helps us to draw people's attention back to their own behaviors, their own motivations, and the meaning that they and their religious or social background have given to this behavior or experience. It helps us to put people back in the driver's seat of their life, so please let's start talking about people rather than irrelevant neurochemicals. And again, this kind of fits with the theme of what I was talking about, generalizations and specifics, or generalities and specifics, scope. If you zoom in all the way because it feels really scientific and cool and makes you sound smart on dopamine, because it's a neurotransmitter in science and chemistry. Yeah, all that sexy stuff. If you do that, and you ignore the generality of this complex thing that is a person interacting in a society, interacting in an environment, interacting in history, well, you're not going to get a very good answer. So you have to come at it from various stages and steps. And when we culturally, both in clinical practice and generally, popularly, begin to oversimplify things and add scientific sounding voodoo words, even though, dopamine is a real thing, but when it's used that way, it kind of isn't. When we start doing that, we do ourselves a disservice because we're not remembering that there's a perspective to things. And that's what the Fractal Journal is about. Visit me at www.fractaljournal.com for essays, stories, and more that contextualize things. That's kind of where I wanted to have a focus for a journal that publishes various things in various mediums, because there's lots of great writers and lots of great folks doing things and even similar things. But this specific thing, I feel the more people need to do, so I took it upon myself to start it, and I'm happy with it so far, and I hope to take it further. And I hope that this video has been of some use to. It's either been edifying or cathartic. It's the new YouTube channel I set up is called Mellow Mission Productions. Please subscribe to the channel and give it a thumbs up. That helps out. I will eventually be moving stuff over to DTube. I'll still stay on YouTube, but I'll be doing the whole dual thing because YouTube is also kind of weird. And thanks so much for joining me today. Cheers.